welcome to the 0k shield tutorial. Here we cover topics such as why aren't these units taking damage, what are all these purple lines doing, where's my energy gone, and just more generally how to use and fight against shields. We'll take the Thug as an example. It has 170 damage per projectile, which means it does 170 damage per shot that hits the shield. Each shield has an amount of health, and an amount of regen, which is shown down here and up here, and a radius and a recharge cost. When it doesn't have enough energy to block a projectile, the projectile goes right through and hits whatever's behind. But now that it has enough energy, the projectile is intercepted. So here is the general rule. If a shield has more health than the damage of the projectile that is hitting it, then the projectile is blocked and the shield takes that damage. Otherwise, the projectile goes straight through. So for example, with these phantoms, they have 1500 damage, a felon has 1600 health, and a thug has 1250. So when they fire, one of the shields blocks, one of the shields doesn't. Notably, projectiles don't go away when they're blocked by shields, they just explode. This means that high AoE weapons can deal a little bit of damage through shields, and this makes bombs especially good. A high damage unit like Lance would seem like it's good against shields, but in fact it deals its 3000 damage over 1 second, which means each instance of damage is only 100. This means if I try and kill this fusion reactor, most of it is intercepted by this shield. EMP, Disarm and Slow convert a third of their damage to damage against shields. So for example, a Racketeer here does 833 damage against shields, to make it a bit less powerful against shields essentially. Units with a mix of status and normal damage convert their status damage into damage against shields, and this is the damage used for penetration and for dealing the damage. Status effects are also quite good at disabling shield bearers, with a slowed shield bearer charging at reduced speed, and an EMP'd or disarmed shield bearer losing all of its charge as soon as it becomes disabled. And finally, some edge cases. Flamethrowers deal 3 times damage against shields, while gas weapons deal 1.5 damage against shields. This is because they penetrate and would deal very little damage otherwise, although usually we try and avoid this. Black holes don't go through shields at all, while both Dominatrix and Juggernaut, or other gravity gun weapons, go right through. I'll now look at some details about the shields, starting with the personal shields. There are 3 personal shield units found in the Shieldbot factory: the Constructor, the Assault, and the Weird unit. The properties of a personal shield are that it has a relatively low maximum charge, relatively low charge rate, but it doesn't cost any energy at all to charge, which is quite an advantage early on in the game. The Felon is somewhat special in that it can use its shield battery to deal damage, dealing a large amount of damage as long as it has shield charge remaining. The exact rate of this is 75 shield charge for 108 damage. Next, there are 2 area shields, as well as an area shield that can be equipped by the commander: the mobile version and the static version. The static version is cheaper and takes less energy to charge. All constructors can in fact build the static version, and the static version can be morphed to a mobile version, so there's always shields available for any factory. And finally, the funnel web shield. The funnel web shield is quite unusual. It has an immense charge, but it has a recharge time in which it cannot be recharged. Here it's saying 10 seconds because it's being continually damaged here. Once the 10 seconds are up, then its disruption effect will go off and it will be able to charge at quite a high rate. That's all well and good, but how should shields actually be used? Well, one answer is to hold control and keep your units moving in formation. But a more useful tactical answer is to hit and run. When you have a full shield charge, you really want to use that charge up to get something out of it. And then when your charge starts depleting, it's time to walk away happy with the damage that you've dealt. To fight shields, the best approach is to hit them at range or hit them with overwhelming damage so that they cannot regenerate. Shields are great at fighting and retreating, but don't do so well under sustained fire. This is because it is often cheaper to buy damage than it is to buy shield charge. Here are some of the common units which you might use to plink away at shields from range, sorted by how much it costs to buy any one damage per second. And above are the shields and how much it costs to buy their charge per second. As you can see, it is often more efficient to buy artillery just for the purpose of suppressing shields than it is for the shield player to keep on building shields to stop the artillery. Even some artillery will increase the time it takes for a shield ball to recharge between attacks, and of course artillery has other uses as well, so it's not a wasted investment. Shield mastery comes from understanding how the shields work together, how they transfer charges along these purple lines. What's happening here is that area and personal shields will periodically search out nearby shields, that is, shields that are touching, and transfer charge between them, with charge flowing from the high charge shield to the low charge shield. On a technical level, they are transferring the charge 15 times a second to a nearby neighbor, and the transfer rate is 1% of the difference between the charges. But you don't need to know all that. All you really need to know is that if you deal damage to a shield in a clump, then that damage will eventually, over a few seconds, be spread out between the shields in the clump, and they will all help recharge the damage. To finish up, we'll look at the peculiar interaction of missile silos and shields. Area shields have 3600 hit points, and tac nukes have 3500 damage, so 4 area shields block 4 tac nukes. However, if I fire one tac nuke, and then fire a second tac nuke shortly after, the shield linking causes each of the shields to drop below 3500, letting my tac nuke through. If you remember one thing, just remember that most clumps of shields can be beaten by firing one tac nuke at them, followed shortly after by another. If you have a larger clump of shield though, you may need to use an EMP missile. They go right through shields with their 10,000 damage against shields, and then once everything's EMP'd, you can tac nuke anything you like. The last two missiles are Inferno and Quake, a flame missile that damages a large area, and a seismic missile that flattens terrain. Neither deal high damage, high enough to penetrate shields, but they can both still interact with shields regardless. Inferno deals large area damage, so can be used to hit things around the edge of shields, dealing a bit of damage to these wind gens on the edge. And Quake can be used to smooth shields that are hiding behind terrain. Now, Quake is intercepted by shields, so it isn't all that useful by itself. The smoothing effect is reduced by how high it is above the ground when it impacts, but it can be used in conjunction with other missiles. So say we want to kill off this fusion. We couldn't do it with EOS because it would hit the wall. We can't kill the wall with Quake. To kill it, we'd actually have to use 3 missiles. First, take a Shockley and use its high trajectory to EMP the shield. Then we'd shoot a Quake at the wall to flatten the wall. And then we'd take our EOS and hit the fusion. Now, most collections of shield and terraform can be destroyed by missile silos somehow, although sometimes it'd be quite expensive to figure out how. Funnel webs are a different matter, as their large shields allow them to block 5 tac nukes at once. To beat a funnel web, you'll probably want to get some Shockleys. With 2 Shockleys, one goes right through the shield, while the other stuns it. Even when the funnel web comes back online, it will have 0 shield, as EMP removes all shield charge.